slightly different. I wanted to do a kind of, how to write a solid offer, especially in this market. Okay. And I know without me having to ask, probably the majority of you have had trouble getting offers accepted because it is highly competitive out there. So I want to just show a couple things. I wrote down about 15, 16 different things here. Things that I see happen with purchase agreements, that some of which will help you get offers accepted and some of them will prevent your offers from being rejected or considered. I get to see a lot of weird stuff, a lot of poorly written contracts with weird verbiage. And, when that stuff comes across an agent's desk on the listing side, it's going to give them the impression that maybe you don't know what you're doing. Okay. So I want to just give you a couple of these little tips that I think will help. Some of it will probably be pretty self-explanatory. One or two things maybe a little bit more creative. So the first thing on my list is make sure you guys are using templates. Make sure you're using templates for your purchase agreements, okay? So if you go and you log into Zip Forms, right up here is templates. And what you can do in templates is you can set up your basic offer template. So you don't have to remember to type stuff in, because every time you have to re-enter things into your purchase agreements, it leaves another opportunity for error, right? Leaving your license number out, not putting the address in, whatever, little tiny things, okay? So I have multiple different templates here, offer for listings in COVID and so on. But, mainly you're going to have an offer and a listing template. So here's my offer template. I just add in here my cover sheet, my purchase agreement, and then in the purchase agreement, once I open it, you're going to see that it's all, all the stuff's filled out, the brokerage name, my license number, my name. And then on the actual contract here, look, I've got the check boxes where they need to be, and this information's filled in already. And then I got, more check boxes over here for, pre-approval letter attached and, giving proof of funds and little minor things. But again, it's just little things that if you don't do it or you miss it, because you're doing a blank one from scratch every time, well, then it's going to make things it's just one more step again to fail. And I don't want to see you guys do that. Okay. I have my NHD stuff filled in. I have all my seller check boxes for expenses and costs. So I have all this done one time. And once it's done and I want to write an offer, I go like this. I just go into my transactions and then I click a new transaction, right? New purchase. And then I fill in my address, the residential, but then right here, select template, offer template. Okay. And now I can apply this template to the offer I'm about to write with all those basic check boxes and information pre-filled in. Okay. So that's one little tip. And I did do a video on how to set up a template. If anyone's interested, just ping me and I will send you a link to that video. Okay. So.
Hey, Nick, real quick, how do you, you said that these videos are recorded. Is there a library that we can have access to them?
Yes, all of our offices have YouTube channels, and I will have the market centers post links to them. And then if there are specific ones you're interested in, let me know, and I can dig through and find the ones that you're looking for. In fact, while I have it on my brain,
okay,
I'm going to go and pull up a link to the YouTube videos right now so you guys can just have it. One quick second. All right. Okay, so if you take a look in the chat, boom, there you go. Templates, how to write an offer, all kinds of the classes that we've done. I need to update a few of our most recent ones, but everything you could possibly want should live right on in there. Okay, so that was tip number one, is to use templates. Now, let me pull up a contract here. All right, perfect. So now I'm going to kind of just walk through the purchase agreement. I'll show you some do's and don'ts. Okay, so first, the deposit. the deposit. You know, in a challenging market like this, where it is extremely low inventory, tons of competition, tons of buyers out there trying to buy. You know, if I put a low deposit, that's just one little thing that a listing agent is going to look at that and say, we need to counter this, right? And when I look at, you know, writing an offer in my brain, I want to do everything I can to prevent a counter offer. I want to make it so clean it can just be signed. Okay. So what should your deposits be? They need to be upwards of 2 to 3%. Okay. 3% is the max. And then that's because of liquidated damages and dispute resolution. You don't need to put anything beyond that, but you have to put enough skin in the game to show that your clients are serious about this and that they're willing to put money up front and risk it in the event, you know, they can't perform or what have you. So, you know, minimum probably 2%, but you know, if you never should you be looking at like $1,000 or $2,000, right? So you want to be on the higher side of the scale. Obviously, the more qualified your buyer is, the easier it'll be to, you know, to put a higher amount. But even FHA 3.5%, I mean, they got the cash. So, you know, start thinking about getting your deposits raised. Secondly is escrow time frame. Escrow time frame. Now the lenders are busy. They got a lot of business going on, which is great for them. You need to talk to your lenders about the shortest amount of time they can possibly do an escrow. So, you know, don't just put a blanket 30 days in there automatically. You know, if your lender can move them forward a little faster, maybe getting them underwritten, approved, you know, prior to even submitting your offer, sometimes those deals can go in like 20 days. So a simple but effective one, shorten the escrow time frame. And all this I'm going to say as I go through my checklist, but there's always a balance, and it's having conversations with the other agents. Sometimes a seller doesn't want a short escrow. Okay, got it. Well, what do they want? So, you know, one of the easiest answers is, what would the seller want? Ask the listing agent and then put that into your contract. But generally speaking, people want to sell their houses quick, especially if it's vacant. So find out what that day is. Okay. Tip number 3. You see on my contract here, all the check boxes are checked. The client or the brokerage names are filled in. The license numbers need to be filled in, right? And it needs to have everything done, right? I don't know what Tina's number is, so I'm just going to make it up. All right, perfect. So you don't want to have simple little things. You'd be surprised at how many contracts that I review where the buyer's brokerage will be filled in, but then these check boxes are unchecked. The whole listing side is completely empty, and the deal will have closed. And I'll look at a file like this going, you know, who didn't fill all this stuff in? What's going on in here, right? And it just shows that either you're not paying enough attention or you haven't been trained properly on how to put transactions together. So make sure, and again, that all comes with the template is one thing, right? Because on my template, as the buyer's broker, I'm writing the offer. This part's already filled in at the bottom, right? So make sure everything is filled in as needed. We'll go ahead and do this, right? Cool. Also, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you know what company you work for, because I see this happen a lot where you guys will write in Keller Williams Pacific Estates, but you're in the La Mirada office or you're in the Cerritos office. Pacific Estates is the name of the Long Beach office. Keller Williams Pacific Estates Cerritos is the Cerritos office, and Keller Williams Pacific Estates La Mirada is the La Mirada office. So make sure you have your correct brokerage information filled in there, okay? Now, one easy way to get the other agent's information filled in here is to use this, this feature right up here in the top left, MLS Connect. MLS Connect. When you use that, you can go in and you can find the MLS number of the property you're writing an offer on, type it in, click include photo, find it, and it'll go grab all the information directly from the MLS. It'll fill in the other company, the agent, their license numbers, the address, all that stuff. So use the MLS Connect feature. It's very, very handy. Okay. All right. Number four is loans, your loan amount. Okay. So you may have a client that wants to put, you know, as little as 5%, but they could go up to 10 or 20%. When you put in your loan amount, you have to be careful. What you want to write in here is the highest loan amount and the lowest down payment on your offers. And there's a reason to this. Usually a higher down payment, it's going to look stronger, certainly. But the problem is if you write an offer, let's say at 20%, but your client intends to pursue a 10% down payment, there's a paragraph here on page 2, buyer stated financing. And it says the seller is relying on the buyer's representation of the type of financing the buyer's getting, and they've agreed to a specific closing date. They've agreed to a certain price based on what the buyer's represented here. And then it says here that the seller has no obligation to cooperate with the buyer's efforts to obtain any financing other than that is specified in the purchase agreement. So what does that mean? Well, if you write an offer at 20% and then you want to change loans to 10%, if that causes a delay, you're basically opening the buyer up to have a cancellation and lose their deposit, okay? Because you're changing the terms of the agreement that you have written here. So I recommend that you go with the lowest down payment that they say they would plan to pursue. They can always put more down there. They can always put more, but the seller doesn't have to agree with putting less of a down payment, okay? So that's my next tip. Lowest down payment amount, highest loan amount. And then number 5, again, we kind of know this, but the contingency timeframes. This would be the next tip, the contingency timeframes. If you can, shorten them, okay? If you can, shorten them. So what we have here is we have an appraisal contingency, which is defaulted to 17 days. We have a loan contingency, which is defaulted to 21 days. And I'm seeing this all the time, counteroffers coming back. All contingencies removed in 14 days, or inspection 7, appraisal 10, loan 17, whatever, okay? I don't really ever care too much about shortening the timeframes. I know there's tons of agents out there that say, oh, you got to remove all your contingencies in a week. You know, the truth is, it's just not realistic. It's just not going to happen, okay? I personally don't really care about it for a couple of reasons. One, I know that most of the other listing agents are not going to be super diligent about getting notices to perform in a timely fashion, right? You guys maybe have had experience with this. They call you and ask you to remove contingencies. They send you a text or an email, hey, remove your contingencies, but they don't send the notice to perform, which is technically what triggers the potential cancellation here. So if I've got a 7-day inspection and I need a few more days, I know I'm probably going to get it in most circumstances, okay? Now, what I always coach my agents, and I will tell you to tell your clients to do, is to make sure your buyers know that once they open escrow, there are so many things, so many hurdles to go through, so many reasons why this deal will not close, okay? There's all kinds of things that can get in the way. So just be prepared for that. Be prepared for the event where you need to walk away and bail, okay? So if you open an escrow and the listing agent's adamant about this 7-day inspection and you can't quite get within the 7 days and they send the notice to perform, you just have to play hardball and say, great, cool, we can't remove the contingency yet, so I guess you have to cancel on us, right? 9 times out of 10, they'll either at least give you a couple days or the days will just go by, okay? So I never really care too much about that because most sellers don't want to start over. And if the agent is good enough, they'll be able to get you some time, okay? I'm going to jump ahead and go to my inspection contingency real quick. And I'm going to show you, so we talked about shortening contingency timeframes, 17 days. I have no problem putting that down to like 7 or even 5, right? And then one other little thing I do in my purchase agreement is at the bottom of paragraph 14, paragraph E, 14E, notice to perform. The default for the notice to perform is it gives the party 2 days to either remove the contingency or cancel. So you see here what I did is I changed it to 3 days. So now I've bought an extra day for that notice to perform. So when I have a 5-day inspection contingency, knowing that it's unlikely the other agent's going to give me a notice to perform until the 5th day at the earliest, I basically have 8 days now, if that makes sense. Okay, so I've just kind of pre-built in a little extra time. And I have never been counted on that before because most agents stop reading the contract after page like 3, right? So something to keep in mind. Okay, let's see. I'm going to write out these terms next, and I'm going to let you guys, I'll put it in the chat as well. So I know you're all being asked on many deals to remove your appraisal contingency or the inspection, or sometimes all contingencies. And we always recommend that the buyer never remove all their contingencies up front. Okay. So one way to work on the appraisal, many of you know this, is to add some verbiage in here. Buyer to pay whatever the number is, $5,000 over highest appraised value. Okay. So the reason why I like this verbiage is because essentially you are removing the appraisal contingency with that verbiage. Okay. So when they say remove your appraisal contingency, okay, well, we are, but we're going to do it this way. And so what I mean by that is the problem with just removing an appraisal contingency without any other language is that you don't know what the discrepancy is going to be of what the purchase price is and what the highest appraised value is. So it's an unknown, right? It's an unknown. And since it's an unknown, your client has a higher level of risk. What this does is you're basically pre-negotiating what happens if the appraisal comes in low. And instead of just removing the contingency completely, you're basically limiting the amount. You're limiting the amount to, in this case, $5,000. Now your client has to have additional cash to do this. They can't be like just buying, just skating by on the skin of their teeth there. They got to have enough cash to be able to do this. So, but most people, if they're buying a home, they usually can cough up another $1,000, $2,000. But show enough, again, skin in the game that it'll make it lucrative for the seller. Okay. So then when you call the other agent and say, look, we've removed our appraisal contingency by pre-agreeing to how much over we'll pay, and we think 5,000 is fair. And I have had numerous agents use this with success and get this accepted. Is it going to work every time? No, because there are going to be other agents out there and other buyers that will absolutely remove an appraisal contingency. I just, advise my clients personally, I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that. It's just too much risk and it's an unknown. You don't know what the number is. What if it's 50 grand? You're going to cough up another 50 grand on top of your 20%, So that's one thing to consider. Okay. All right. Let's keep going here. What's next on my list? Termite. A lot of us are asking for termite and Section 1 clearance, right? I see that all the time. I see that all the time. Now, here's the thing. Again, you're asking the seller to pre-agree to an unknown. They don't know how much this termite work is going to be. And it's as simple as just taking it out and making it a part of your buyer's investigation. Remember, your buyer has a chance to conduct any investigations they want. Most termite companies will do a termite for free as long as you use them to do the work. And you can make it a part of your repair request. In fact, that's the way these contracts have been moving towards. The termite used to be an actual line item in the contract, and they took it out. They wanted to make it like any other investigation on the property, because just for decades it's been just kind of this normal kind of process that the seller provided a termite clearance, right? I don't know where that came from or how it came to be. It was just customary, quote unquote. Well, I don't know if that custom is going to be very effective in this market. So when you guys are writing offers, I recommend you tell your clients, let's not ask for the termite. Let's get the inspection done during escrow. And if it looks like it's really, really bad, we'll ask for repairs. And if it's not, maybe you'll choose to save up some money and do it a year down the road, right? That is my next. Next one. I see this all the time on counter offers, okay? 7B2. Seller shall pay the cost of compliance with any other minimum mandatory government inspections and reports, if required as a condition of closing escrow under any law. And then the next one is seller shall pay the cost of compliance with any other minimum mandatory government retrofit standards required as a condition of closing under any law, whether the work is required to be completed before or after escrow. Okay. So what is this? And I bring this up because at probably 50% of contracts I see, there's a counteroffer that says 7B2I and II to be deleted from the contract. Okay. And what that tells me is one of two things. One, we asked for these investigations, not knowing if they're required or not. And two, not fully understanding what this stuff really is. Okay. So what does this have to do with? Government inspections. Government inspections. Well, think about this. We have city government, we have county government, we have state government, we have federal government. Those are the types of governments that we're talking about. And so sometimes we have a city government inspection, okay? i.e., City of LA and unincorporated areas have the 9A report looking for essentially energy efficiency. And then the city of Compton has a pre-sale building inspection where somebody comes out and actually, walks the property and looks for permits and, non-conforming uses. The city of Long Beach along the coast has parking impacted inspections for any homes and exemptions for any condos. Okay. So what I recommend is before you write your offer and just check those boxes, do some research and figure out, do we need to do one of these, right? Like if I'm in my neighborhood in Long Beach, I'm in 90815. There are no city reports. If that's the case, I'm going to write my offer and I'm going to uncheck the boxes. That way I'm not getting a counter from the other agent who isn't really sure what could come up. And then all of a sudden I get a counter that says 7B2 is to be deleted. Remember, I'm trying to write an offer so clean, it's accepted. Okay. How do I find out if a city has a pre-sale inspection? The internet is your friend. Google.com. Okay. Start there. Another great tip. Talk to your escrow officers. They're doing a lot of business all over the place. Does this city have an inspection or not? Usually they'll know definitively. And if they say that they don't know, again, call the city, get on their site, or find another escrow officer that might know. Okay. So again, figure out what this stuff means. The guys and gals, what I have found in my experience in real estate is that the best salespeople tend to be the ones that aren't paying attention a lot to the contract. And it's just basically personality styles. We want to be social, we want to be out meeting people, we want to be out closing and converting, but we don't want to be reading 20 pages of fine print. And yet understanding how these contracts work can really give you a leg up in negotiating, representing your client, and being the professional that we're paid to. We get paid a lot of money to sell houses. You guys need to take it upon yourself to really understand what all these things mean. Okay. I guess I'm lucky because I have to read this stuff almost every single day and talk to lawyers all the time. So you guys aren't being forced to do that, and yet it is part of your job. Okay. So figure out, understand what this means.
Nick, can I ask a quick question?
Please.
I went through this when I did the sale I had in Compton with the pre-sale inspection. So with my knowledge with that, knowing once they come in and they say, okay, this needs to be fixed, that needs to be fixed, but the buyer has the option of waiving that and taking on that responsibility. If would you advise, when you're writing a contract to still check those boxes just in case, because it might come up something that the buyer decides he doesn't want to take on?
So what I do is I that's a negotiation. Okay. A negotiation. That's where you call the other agent and say, look, I know the place is in Compton. What are your plans for the city report? Are you going to get one done? And is your client going to do the work? Right. Negotiating, by the way, everybody, negotiating is just picking up the phone and calling the other agent and saying, hey, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? I want to put together a strong offer, yada, yada, yada. Okay. And if they say, seller, we have so many offers, the seller knows that they don't have to do this work. Well, then, you can make it as part of your investigations. You can still uncheck the boxes. You can still order the report in escrow. You can tell the other agent, hey, I'm going to order this report because my buyer wants to know what's on it. And we'll, if it's not too crazy, then we'll notarize the document and take ownership of it. But it is an unknown, and you should do your due diligence to figure out what all that work is and what it's going to look like. Okay. But you can make that, like I said, during escrow.
So if you uncheck those boxes and it comes back that is something that is too much for the buyer, do they have the right to, say we're not going to do it?
Yep, it's an investigation, right? As long as you don't write somewhere on this contract or in any counter offers, buyer shall pay for city report and cost of work.
Okay.
And remember, look at this paragraph 2I and II. There's two different things. The first one is for the inspection. Who's going to pay for the inspection? The second one is who's going to do the retrofitting, meaning the work requirements. Okay. So if you remove only the second box, well, somebody can still pay for the report itself. You just haven't clarified who's going to pay for the work. Okay. Now, some cities do allow it to be waived, but only a couple, only one or two. So like the city of 9A can be made the buyer's responsibility, but the seller still has some stuff that they have to sign on it. The city of Compton allows for a notarized document to be delivered for the buyer to take ownership of it and complete any work within like 60 or 90 days. Okay. So find out, call, figure it out, and then, make it a part of your negotiation and see if the buyer is willing to take it on, and then figure out what taking it on actually means so they're not blindsided moving in. And then the city comes out and says, yeah, you got 100 grand worth of work that needs to be done here. Okay. All righty, let's keep going. So the next thing is fees and costs. So look, this is what a typical RPA is going to look like. Seller to pay, seller to pay, seller and buyer to pay, seller to pay, seller to pay, seller to pay. Okay. And many of you have experience where the seller pays or credits the buyer some money towards their closing costs, either upfront or as a result of a repair request. Okay. If your buyer is capable and has the funds, an effective way to raise the seller's net is to pay for some of the seller's fees, right? So instead of like seller to pay for owner's title, maybe the buyer can pay for that. Or maybe you negotiate 50-50. Maybe the buyer picks up any transfer fees or taxes. Maybe you take the warranty out. That's actually the next thing that's on my list here. Maybe the buyer pays their own warranty, or maybe you as the agent cover the warranty for them. Okay. So you can really start thinking, what are some fees maybe that the buyer can pick up for the seller to put a couple grand in their pocket and, raise the buyer's closing costs instead of the seller's. So that's another thing that I'm hearing more and more is that buyers are paying some of the seller's costs.
Nick, I had a question. How much is the owner's title?
It's going to be probably $1,000 to $1,500 somewhere in that neighborhood. If anyone out there in the chat knows, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. And it's all that and the escrow fees are typically scaled with the property value, property price. All righty. Let's see. Warranty, I just said, I would probably recommend, again, buyer paying their own warranty or you as the agent picking up the cost on that. I still hear agents call and ask me, how do I word it if we want the seller to pay for some of the buyer's closing costs? In this market, I mean, does it happen? Once in a while, maybe 1 out of 100 deals I see. But at this point, don't ask, right? Don't ask. So, I see this happen a lot where lenders tell their buyer, oh yeah, it's a lot of money, I know. Just ask the seller to pay, some of that for you, right? And then the buyer has in their mind, oh, I want the seller to pay all my closing costs. We're not in that market. It's highly competitive. And so you need to have a discussion with your buyers and let them know, look, the seller has costs. You have costs. It costs money to buy a house, right? The seller's paying somewhere around 8%, 7 to 8% to sell their house. You're going to pay around 3% to buy a house. Okay. And every dollar you ask for in a closing cost is $1 out of the seller's pocket, which means it weakens your offer, which means it's less likely to get accepted. Okay. And I say all this, sometimes your buyers are just going to have to get burned a little bit. Okay. And that would be unfortunate, but all this is really going to be part of your expectation conversation prior to even showing properties. Okay. All righty, what is on my list next? So we talked about shortening the inspection contingency. We also talked about changing that notice to perform deadline to 3 days instead of 2. Let me see, what else do I have here? Okay, here's another tip. It's not on the purchase agreement. When you write an offer, have your lender call the other agent. Have the lender call the other agent and say, I'm the lender, buyer is amazing, pre-approved, great credit, we're ready to close, blah, blah, blah. We're just taking it one step higher. I've done this for almost my entire career, and I always get comments like, wow, that was a great move, very smart. Thank you for having the lender call. That really went a long way, right? Blah, blah, blah. So, you definitely want to take advantage of your resources, and the lender is the strong one because, most listing agents are concerned, is this buyer going to be able to close or not, right? Well, let's address some of those fears up front and have the lender step in. with that same note, my next tip for getting an offer accepted in this market, you as the agent must call. Call. Do not text, do not email, pick up the phone and negotiate. Okay. When I am working with a buyer, I'm talking to that agent 3 or 4 times over the phone right around the time the offer gets submitted, right? I call to set up the showing. I call when I get back and my buyer's interested. I call after the offer is submitted, and then I'll shoot a text to confirm. Okay. But I am calling and doing everything I can to speak to these agents. Now, I know many of you are going to say that agents are not picking up their phone. You're right. I totally get that. So what do you got to do? Try calling from different numbers, right? Hunt them down, find a way. There is a way. Sometimes what I like to do is just text and say, hey, I'm sure you're super busy with this listing. I would like to speak to you at a time that's, of convenience for you. When would be a good time to talk for about 5 minutes? Okay. And I try to just book an appointment over text and then jump on the phone. Okay. Now, is this going to work every single time? No. And I get it. Right. But do everything you can to get on that phone and call the other agents. One of my pet peeves is always to, I'll receive offers on listings and I'll have never heard from the agent at all. Not even a text in many cases. Okay. All right, good. Someone left a message and said, winners always call back. There you go. Right. I love that. Okay. Let's see. My 15th one here is understanding the remedies, okay, for breach of contract. We have liquidated damages and we have arbitration. Just kind of, should have a general understanding of what these mean. But what I really wanted to do on this topic here is these are optional initials. These are optional initials. So when you go to get the contract signed, your client might miss them, and boom, triggers a reason to get a counteroffer. And remember, we're trying to avoid a counteroffer, right? So if I take this and I run through to get this thing signed, right? Click on my e-sign, purchase agreement, pick my doc, pull up the contracts, wherever it is, right there, boom. Okay, it's there. I hit next. Who's signing? Buyer. Oh, I don't have an email, so we'll just say Sally and Tina, right? And then I hit next. So I wanted to just show you when some of you use ZipLogic, Digital Ink, some of you use DocuSign, but I wanted to show you what this looks like inside of DocuSign. Okay. I have mine connected. You all have a free DocuSign account, by the way, and I'm pretty sure the one you get through Keller Williams, you can use the same login credentials to use DocuSign in Zip Forms. Once my forms come up, let's see, right? Oh, it's not going to be on there because I don't have a buyer. Well, okay, here we go. So notice right here the initial. See how it's white and yet at the bottom of the page it's yellow. The reason why is because yellow is required, white is optional. So after you talk to your clients and say, I recommend that you initial the liquidated damages and the arbitration clauses. Here's what they do. It limits your, damages in case there's a dispute. You have to release your deposit, but that means the seller can't sue you. And then arbitration is an alternative to going to court, which can be very costly to defend yourself with attorneys, and the awards tend to be much higher. So I recommend you sign both of these. Are you okay with that? They say yes. All right, good. Now you go into DocuSign, you click on the initial, and you make it required. Boom, just like that. And you click on this one, and you make it required. Okay, that way it's not going to get missed. That way when you send off the offer, it's just one more reason why you're not going to get countered. Okay. In the ZipLogic version of this, it's very, very similar. Okay, so you just hover over the initial and a little menu should pop up and you'll be able to change it to a required field. Okay. All right. So really, guys and gals, the last thing that I have on my list here to get offers accepted is use common language. What does that mean? I see offers that says, seller should do X, Y, and Z. Seller should, give disclosures in 5 days. Why would you say should, right? Seller to provide disclosures within 5 days. You need to be very clear and concise with the language that you use. And if you don't know what to write or you're not sure how to phrase something, call me and let me know. I'll help you, or text me. I can usually just write some verbiage for you in a text very, very easily. But you want to make sure that you are, using common language, because remember, this is a contract, right? This is a contract, and you want to be very clear and specific. So if you need help with that, reach out and let me know. All right, guys and gals, that's all I have. Does anybody out there in Zoom land have any tips that they want to share that has helped them getting an offer accepted anytime recently? Feel free to unmute if you do.
Nick, this is Mark Larico.
What's up, Mark?
I did use the seller credit. That did help me out. I had an FHA buyer in Lakewood for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home, and it was tough. We were getting knocked out. We were paying the $10,000 appraisal contingency cap.
Yep.
We also removed the inspection contingency
Yep.
on another home, and we even paid for seller's closing costs. The first time we did it, we couldn't get accepted. The second time we finally got it.
Wow. Good.
Yeah.
I mean, FHA guys and gals, it's got to be brutal out there for them, and maybe even VA. You guys are, boots on the ground and probably know more, but I can only imagine how tough it is to get an FHA offer accepted right now. So, just got to keep working and make sure your clients really understand what's happening and why this is going down here. So thank you for that, Mark. That's great.
Mm-hmm. I did try with a different buyer, and the listing agent said, "Oh, I think you're too high on the price, and we want you to remove the whole appraisal contingency." And I said, "Well, if I do that, I'm not going to have the buyers pay for the seller's closing costs, and we're going to reduce the price."
Right.
And it came in at the lower price, and the buyer was even thrilled because that was an even better deal.
Yeah. Right.
Out of the pocket.
Love it. Yeah, just be creative. And, other agents are just not seeing this type of stuff. They're not seeing or getting trained on how to be effective with writing the offers. So this will give you a little bit of a leg up. Now, again, there's no magic bullet, but some of this can definitely help you. So there's a few real world examples of it actually working. So thank you for that. Anyone else want to comment or chime in?
One more tip.
Yeah.
I know if we're releasing contingencies, I also have that up front, the CR removed, so I can let the seller know, like, hey, it's already explained to the buyer, and they even signed it. Like, there's no hesitation on that, because sometimes you get the offers and there's no CR removed or the CR is not included, and who's to know? Like, they don't know what they're doing, but with that form, they at least have a chance to read it.
Yep. Love it. Yeah, and it shows the other agent that you've already had that conversation, and not only have you had the conversation, you got it signed so that when the day comes, you're ready to release it right away. So that's very powerful. I like that. Any other comments, feedback, guys and gals, getting deals accepted? I know it's a tough one out there.
Hey Nick, so as far as, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So as far as like the closing costs, would you recommend like including that in the offer price? So instead of, you know what I mean, like if they don't have enough cash for that, just including that like on top of the purchase price?
That's not going to help. You have to, if the buyer wants to pay some of the seller's costs, it's going to be a part of their cash that they need to bring in to close escrow. So bumping the price up will just it won't accomplish that.
All right.
Yep.
Hey, Nick, Simon, quick question.
Yeah.
How would you explain paragraph 21 as an example, like on a real life example on there?
Sure.
As far as liquidated damages.
So basically, liquidated damages, let's take a look at it. Yeah. So remedies for buyer's breach of contract. Okay, so what this says is if buyer fails to complete this purchase because of the buyer's default, and a default means that they haven't performed on the contract somewhere and they no longer have a protection or a contingency around it. Okay, so theoretically, buyers removed all contingencies and now they want to cancel, or they're trying to cancel for a reason that the contingency was already removed, right? So like, maybe they removed the inspection and the appraisal, but then all of a sudden they say, oh, I don't like the condition of the property. Well, just because you still have your loan contingency, you don't have a cancellation right because of condition. Okay, so default Seller shall retain as liquidated damages the deposit actually paid, okay, no more than 3%. So it's limited to the 3% right there. So what does this mean? Well, it means the buyer has to give up the deposit if they breach the contract. Well, what is the alternative? The alternative is the seller can sue the buyer. Okay, so what this does is it avoids having a dispute resolved by a lawsuit. Okay, so this is essentially pre-agreeing that if you don't perform on this contract with no contingencies, then you're agreeing to give us your deposit to the seller, and we in turn will not sue you for damages. And typically when there's a lawsuit, it's going to far exceed the 3% plus factoring in the attorney's fees. And you guys, when you guys get sued, you have attorneys to represent you. You pay your deductible and you have attorneys. Buyers and sellers do not. Okay, so what that means is they're going to have to retain somebody to defend them if they get sued, and that alone will be more than the actual deposit probably. And if you lose, well, then double whammy there. Then you would lose whatever the damages are awarded in that case. Okay, so that's how you explain the liquidated damages paragraph. Does that make sense?
Got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks, Nick.
And then again, arbitration is also pre-agreeing to the type of dispute resolution. So you can either do a full-blown lawsuit, or we can go to mediation and arbitration. Mediation, by the way, everybody, is automatically a part of the agreement. By signing down here doesn't mean they're agreeing to mediation. Mediation is already a part of the contract. And mediation is simply where the buyer and the seller go in front of somebody that is a mediator, and the mediator listens to each side's argument and will make recommendations and try to get the two parties to come to some sort of an agreement. There's no binding decisions made, okay? The option here is arbitration versus going to court for a full-blown lawsuit. Again, arbitration, this is where you go in front of like a retired judge or a real estate attorney, and the arbitrator listens to the dispute between the two parties, and then they make a decision, they make an award, okay? Arbitration costs money, but it is a lot cheaper than, again, hiring an attorney to represent you or defend you in a full-blown lawsuit, okay? So these are just ways to resolve disputes in a faster and cheaper and more effective fashion than using the court system. All right. Any other comments, questions, tips, concerns that you guys have right now for me?
Nope, I will say this was very helpful. I appreciate it.
Glad to hear it. Sounds pretty quiet out there. We'll wrap it up for today. So guys and gals, you know where to find me. Do not hesitate to reach out. I have a job for a reason, is to help you. So please be willing to pick up the phone or shoot me a text. Never feel like you have a dumb question. There's no such thing. I want to help you. Why? Because I don't want you to lose your license, and I don't want to lose mine. All right. So we're in this together. Use your resources.